I'm David Brabham, and welcome to my podcast, When the Flag Drops,
the BS stops.
Good morning, everyone. Just want to welcome you here. My name is Rory. I am the MD of Raw Creative. We do everything from branding, marketing, activation. Part of our ethos that we work with Formula One teams and brands all the way to music. We're really excited to bring you Le Mans winning driver, incredible Formula One driver. Please put your hands together for David Brabham.
Thank you, Rory.
That's true.
Wow, we have a crowd. Hi, everyone. We've got some great guests as well, people I've worked with in the past. Let's kind of get started. I'm David Brabham, and welcome to my podcast, When the Flag Drops, by Raw Creative. This podcast, normally I'm sitting in the other chair, talking about my career. And generally when you see podcasts, there's a lot of drivers on there talking about their careers and how they were able to stand up on the podium and grab the trophy. But to grab that trophy, you need a lot of people in the background who work so incredibly hard to make sure that you have a successful race. And I want to highlight these people in the background who never get talked about, never really, I think, get appreciated in the world of motorsport on what they do. And I have two special guests I'd like to bring on that I've worked with in the past who have worked on incredible projects. And if you look at their career stats, it's quite amazing. They blow away any driver, to be fair. So if I could invite my two guests, Viv Cowley and Peter Hodgkinson. Well, thanks guys for being on this podcast, first one. As you know, we've all worked together in the past. And when we came up with this idea and I thought about two people I wanted on the show, you guys came straight to my mind because of what we'd done in the past. And also what you guys have achieved, because I got a list here of what you guys have actually achieved. It's quite, you should have a listen to this.
Don't, here we go.
Okay, so Viv, 3 Le Mans 24-hour victories. One was technically probably, So in 1993, we drove the Jaguar XJ 220. We won the race, and then we got disqualified. So two Le Mans wins.
Very bittersweet, yeah.
Yeah, I have the same problem when I'm talking about that race weekend. WEC World Champions. You've done 13 Le Mans 24 hours, 3 Daytona 24 hours, 4 Sebring 12 hours. You've worked in MotoGP, Kenny Roberts. You worked on the Bloodhound, and special effects on a Bond movie, Spectre. Wow. That in itself is pretty incredible. So Peter, or Pete, whatever you want, Trans Am Championship win.
Yep.
Yeah. IMSA GTO Championships 2.
Yes.
2-time Daytona 24-hour IMSA GTP champions, 2 years. 1-time Daytona 24-hour in 1990 as well, with Jaguar.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very good.
2-time Le Mans 24-hour wins, 90 and 96. Mm-hmm. 124 Formula One Grand Prix wins and 9 Formula One World Championships.
Correct. He's top trumped me there. Sorry.
I think these guys need a round of applause.
We've done some stuff.
You've done some stuff.
We've done some stuff. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we worked together at Jaguar. If you go back in time and you think about when you were both apprentices, you were a tool maker apprentice, and a mechanic apprentice in New Zealand. fast forward a few years, and you're both working for TWR and Jaguar. I mean, you know, Viv, you started. How did you
Wow.
get from where you started to
I
big
had-
team like Jaguar?
I never had any interest in motorsport. My life was motorcycles. I'm a motorcyclist through and through. But I had a relation who worked as a mechanic at TWR, and they were just kicking off the Group C program, and they were after a machinist. So he said, "You really ought to try for this." So I went through the process. I heard nothing for 10 months. And then I got a phone call out of the blue one evening. And a guy said, "Oh, are you still interested in a position?" I said, "Yeah." So I went over and got the job. And that was in February 86. Well, if you think, you're going from a lowly toolmaker with no interest in motorsport, getting a job with TWR, who at the time, you know, they had Group A Rover, Group A Jag, you know, loads of success already under their belt, even though they'd only been going 10 years. TWR started in 76. So there I pop up in 1986, starting on the Group C team. And it was just...
So you went straight into the Group C World Championship.
Well, I was factory based as a machinist, but then my first race was in 86. I went to Spa, 1,000 Ks, so my first motor race. I'd actually been, funny enough, I'd been to Le Mans in 83 because my wife's father was an avid sports car fan, and he had been to Le Mans every year since 69, and I did the obligatory coach trip to Le Mans in 83. So I went as a punter, still with no particular interest.
Right.
And 3 years later, there I am working for the Premier team. It was uncanny, you know. I really felt quite privileged.
Yeah.
So yeah, from real lowly start, I was in amongst it all,
Yeah, right.
which was a great thing.
What about you, Pete?
I was an apprentice mechanic at Team Macmillan Ford in Green Lane in Auckland, and this Ford dealership decided to go car racing, and I was given the opportunity to go around the whole of New Zealand and race at some of the finest racetracks in the world that no one's ever heard of, and I really loved it. I just thought, this is great. This is what I want to do. I finally found the thing I was so interested in, and the guy who worked next to me in the next bay, in 1985, he went to America, and he came back at the end of that year. He'd been car racing for a year in the States. He said, "You've got to come back with me. It's amazing." So I worked 3 jobs, saved up a bit of money, and 1986 went to America. And through a few lies and a little bit of luck, we ended up working for Jack Roush.
Yeah, right.
And the way it started and the way we went.
I mean, Roush Racing, a little bit like TWR back in the day,
Huge.
was a big
One
deal.
guy who had the
Huge.
will to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great opportunity at Roush, and I learnt so much, and I was so out of my depth when I first started there. You just put your head down and do the best you can, but wow, it really set me up as well for my career working there. Taught me so much.
I mean, CV straight away, Roush Racing. I mean, for you, couldn't have been any better, really, could it?
No, by my 3rd year, I was a #1 on Scott Pruitt's GTO car, and these were beasts of cars. 1,000 horsepower in qualifying. To take the tire rubber right off the, off the carcass of the
They had
back.
that much power back then.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Bloody hell.
1,100 horse. If you turned the wick all the way up, we had to change cylinder heads after qualifying because it would lift the
Like a drag car.
It would lift the head off the block.
Does anyone here actually experience 1,000 horsepower? I cannot imagine.
We'd race at about 500, 550. Yeah. And we'd go and we would shake the cars down. We would take them to the Dearborn test track. And of course the drivers wouldn't be there. So I would drive. There'd be an engineer sitting on the floor next to you with a load binder strap around his waist as the seat belt.
He was the data guy, was he?
Yeah, there's the engineer sitting the engine doing all the boost settings and everything else. And he'd be sitting there with a laptop while I was driving, me, no driver, pair of shorts, no helmet, right, doing 100 and something mile an hour on the banking around Dearborn test track.
No, it's a different time.
A different time.
Yeah.
We would bed the differentials in, driving the cars around the block And then one day I drove
round the block as in on the main
on
road.
the road, sitting at the traffic lights in Dearborn, and I drove in. And when I drove in this car, fully liveried up, the whole shebang, there was a police car right behind me. He got out and he said, "Where's Jack?" I said, "His office is over there." 20 minutes later, Jack comes back and says, "You cannot. We've got to stop driving the cars on the road. I'm getting a lot of grief here."
Yeah.
So that was into that, unfortunately.
And that was what year?
That was 1988.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you started at TWR at the end of '88, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what happened then?
Well, I was at the end of season thing in Delmar, the end of championship sort of party, sort of celebration trophy thing. And Tony Dow was standing at the bar, and I thought, here's my golden opportunity. Because I'd watched the Rovers racing in New Zealand and the Jags racing in New Zealand and touring cars. And my first goal when I left New Zealand was to work for Walkinshaw.
Oh, okay.
I always wanted to work for Tom. And there was Tony Dow, who was a team manager at Walkinshaws at the time. And I walked up to him and said, "How about a job?" And he said, "All right, come down for an interview." So I went down for an interview.
Borrowed your buddy's car.
I borrowed Lee White's car, who was the team manager at Rouse, because my little car wouldn't make it.
Right.
All the way down to Indiana. And I got a job with Walkinshaw.
Wow.
I was working there, and I remember when Pete started, talk about sticking out like a sore thumb. So everybody's driving around in Caddies and Lincolns and everything. What did Pete turn up in? A Renault 5.
Top man.
Le Car. They called it a Le Car in the States.
With a temporary license plate, because we're all working illegally.
Exactly. That's a stay under the radar.
Yeah, we had to, yeah.
So you're an illegal immigrant.
Yep.
At that time.
Yep.
Driving an inconspicuous
a race car on
on the
streets.
Yeah.
Of where?
Of Detroit.
Detroit.
Yes.
Detroit. Oh my God.
Yes,
Wow.
you are.
Now, when I raced for TWR, it was 1991 with the XJR 14. I had done F1 the year before with Brabham, and then I went into the sports cars halfway through the year to replace Martin Brundle. And for me, as a driver, it was a whole new level in terms of professionalism in the way they did it. They had the budget to do it properly. They had really good people. What was it like for you guys working in that environment? Did you also think you were in a sort of professional outfit, or was there a lot more shit going on behind the scenes that I didn't know about?
So Ross came along at the end of '90.
So
Ross Brawn. Yeah. And TWR was full of old guys that had worked for Tom for years. And it was all done their own way. And then Ross turned up. And there was no more just running a reamer through some bushes to get a bolt to fit. There was no more fettling bits of carbon to make it fit. When Ross came in, he took one look at what was going on and said, "Stop. We're not going to build cars like this anymore. I want to know why you're putting a reamer through that. I want to know why you're fettling that. Change the drawing. It gets finished as a finished piece." And he just upped the ante, and it upped the way that everybody. He really had an aura about him, and everybody, I think it's fair to say, respected the hell out of him. He was a very quiet man. No shouting and bawling.
Yeah, I remember. I mean,
I
only got a word out of him sometimes.
I remember the first time we built a wooden mock-up of the XR 14, myself and the then chief mechanic. And then as parts would come through, we would literally put stuff on. And I can remember the first time we put a front upright, an XR 14 front upright. We bolted it to the car and it wouldn't turn. It would not turn. It hadn't been relieved on the lower joint. So you put it on, you go, better get Ross. He comes down. It's not like, shouting and screaming. He looks at it. Leave it with me. Off he goes, gets it all sorted, a few hours later. And he was just very, very methodical, very, his thought patterns were, I've got greatest respect for the man, really, just based on him arriving and the car. You know, the product spoke for itself. It arrived, it did the business, and then it went. And then you made a Porsche out of it.
Yeah. But when Ross arrived at Honda in end of 2007, he did the same thing. You know, Ross Brawn arrived, all these world championships behind him. He walks through the door and spends a couple of weeks getting the lie of the land. And he gets us all together in the auditorium, and he says, there's one thing that you need to be successful in motorsport, and that is data. And the data coming off this car is terrible. So he got us all to focus on data. And then he just kept pushing us and pushing us and pushing us. I'll never forget, before the Australian Grand Prix in 2008, a week before, he decided he wanted all 3 cars to go in the wind tunnel. Like, how are we going to do this?
Yeah, right.
And he sort of basically looked at you and said, I don't care how you're going to do it. You're going to do it.
But this is the BAR, not the Brawn.
This
car.
is a BAR.
Yeah,
This is a Honda. And you know, and that's what people like Ross Brawn do. They just raise the game.
Raise the game.
The whole thing.
No question.
Yeah, it just overnight, things just change, and you can feel it. It's right there.
So, obviously XJR14 was actually here in January. Yeah, for the TWR celebration. I don't know if anyone was here, but I mean, it stands out, doesn't it?
Even now.
Even now. So when you started working on that project and started to see what this thing was starting to develop into, did you think this was a bit like out there, or what?
Well, very much so. I mean, the Peugeot was on the scene then, and people were calling it a Formula One car with bodywork. Well, that's pretty much what the XJR14 was. For a start off, the gear change was in the middle, which is very alien to a lot of drivers. You know, you get in, it's there.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. And
I think every driver missed a gear.
And it was a H pattern, not sequential. Yeah. It was still a H pattern box with a rod going straight through the V of the engine onto the box.
Straight through the fuel tank.
Yeah, indeed.
Straight through the fuel tank.
Yeah, through the bag tank. So right from the outset, it was, wow, he's doing it like that. You know, all the bolts went down a size. They usually, a proper race car has aircraft bolts and a front upper wishbone, which would be traditionally, let's say, a 7/16 or a 3/8. All of a sudden, they were 5/16 and a quarter. It was a different animal, completely different animal. It was so thought about, and and again, going back to the fact that a lot of the old guys, like the lead mechanics on the car, had come from Group A Rovers, Group A Jags, and now you're working on what is in essence a Formula One car with bodywork. But it was because it was so quick and it was so good at what it did, it not only with Ross there, it brought everybody else's game. It made you proud to be running this car.
Yeah, right.
Because the thing was going out and getting results. It was, I mentioned to you the first time we worked together, we went to a place called Lurky Levi, which was a tiny little strip in the outback of France. Is
that how it's pronounced in France?
Lurky Levi.
Yes,
and we did aero testing, and the car had a huge pitot tube coming up out the screen, and it was all straight line work we were doing. And this is the first time that I worked with Dave, and they would never have taken a silk cut Jag there, a V12 or. Never. It wouldn't have happened. Tony Southgate would have done his, there you go, that's going to be fine, just run it in that spec. So we started doing things with the car that we hadn't done with the other previous models, the XJR9 and stuff like that. It was just a completely different animal, and it brought everybody's game up. So.
Well, I remember that test when I first actually drove the car. Did the seat fit, and like you said, the gear shifts here on the left, and the gate was so narrow. I mean, literally, it was like this. You had to go through the 6 gears, and you had to really think about it to begin with before it started to feel a little bit more natural later on. And I can remember the first 5, 6, 7 laps, and the smile on my face just got bigger and bigger and bigger, because you could just feel this thing was so planted. And I just went faster and faster and faster till the front started to give up, which was always the weak point on the car because the rear was so solid. And I got out of the car and my mind was just like, I've never experienced anything like that before. And of course, what would happen is the guys before I joined halfway through the year, so Martin Brundle and obviously Teo Fabian and Derek Warwick, they were, at the beginning of that season, seconds ahead of everybody else, weren't they? And you would have been top 10 in a Formula One grid with that car. That's how fast it was. It was really quite special.
Well, I think Martin still to this day will say it's one of the finest cars he's driven.
Yeah. I get asked the same question and immediately go to the XJR14. Yeah.
When we got it in America in '92, we couldn't believe it when we got our first 14, because we'd been running the XJR16, which was just a terrible, it was a very weird version of a.
Do you remember the story?
Thing.
So the XJR14 didn't have a door per se. It had a window.
Yeah, I know. I remember trying to get in it.
Yeah.
I was quite slim, so it was quite easy for me.
And the rule book didn't. This is Ross. We're reading the small print on the rule book. Didn't actually say anything about a door, but what it did say that the window area had to be of a given area, and the pilot had to be able to eject in 5 seconds. That's exactly what they were able to do. But the funny story, the car went to the States. The chief mechanic over there, John Jackson, was a Brit who'd previously been with Ross at Beatrice Formula One.
And Williams.
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 Really dry. Really dry.
Very dry.
And there was a really loud American driver called Price Cobb. He came into the shop to see the car, stood there and looked at it and said, "Hell, what happened to the doors?"
Yeah, right.
John Jackson says, "Well, basically, Price, what's the lead singer? Morrison. Jim Morrison died.
And the doors disbanded.
And the doors, they just disbanded. You know, and Price was like, had to tell that story, because I always think of it. Yeah.
No, it was such a shock to see it, because we were so used to the Tony Southgate cars.
Yeah.
And here, all of a sudden, we had these beautiful, beautiful Jags and we had to put silencers on it, so we never got to hear it in all its glory.
Oh, wow.
Because we had big silencers on it to keep it under the decibel limit for American racing.
And you put ears on it.
And we put ears on it because we weren't allowed to have the scoop. We
had a central scoop on the top of the roof.
Right, yeah. No,
were you there in Miami? We were allowed to race in Miami with the scoop, but the next race at Atlanta, we had to have Mickey Mouse ears on it.
Two little ears, look like ears.
Horrible.
But there you go.
But we had a bad run with it, I suppose, because we broke a wheel and a front wheel in Lime Rock and crashed one car, and then we broke another wheel at Elkhart Lake, where Davy Jones actually ended up upside down in the trees, and he had to push the windscreen out and undo his seatbelts and fall out through this front screen.
Was that because a wheel broke?
Because a wheel broke,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, at Elkhart Lake. So I think we did a couple of chassis that year.
I mean, American racetracks, as we know, compared to European racetracks, night and day. Yeah. Either a billiard table over here and rough as guts over there, particularly in those days.
Yeah.
When I think about the XJR14 and how beautifully done it was, and then to ship it over to America.
Yeah, it was tough.
Well, to literally, Bumpsville, just the tracks are just crazy over there. I mean, the reliability aspect of that would have been straight in my mind.
It was a delicate car in many respects.
It was.
There was always a bit of banter between the European team and the States.
Really?
I know it's hard to believe.
Really?
And we always used to, when they got their hands on the 14, we used to quibble and say, yeah, they did real well, didn't they? That was Inc. and we were Limited, TWR Inc. Yeah, they managed to grab defeat from the clutches of victory.
Thank you.
I think it was my brother who was in the Nissan GTP car that kept nicking all the wins.
He did.
Yeah.
I have your brother's helmet at home.
Oh dear.
Yes.
That's where it went.
Yeah, he left
Yeah.
it.
So during this
Truck.
time, in the IMSA, well, it was IMSA Championships
It was
back
IMSA
then, wasn't it?
Championship.
You know, my brother Jeff, he was a 4 times IMSA champion, and I think one season he won 10 or 12 races. I mean, what was it like racing against that thing?
It was really tough. I mean,
This is pre-14, isn't it?
yeah, pre-14 and as you
Early
say,
late 80s, was it mid
Yeah,
to
yeah.
late 80s?
yeah, they were always just one little bit quicker than us. You only have to be a tenth of a lap quicker, don't you?
It was a
And you're
Monty
winning.
car, wasn't it?
Yeah, they were fantastic. And same with Dan Gurney's
And then the gurney came good as well.
Toyota in
That just took
92.
it to another level back
Yeah.
then, didn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah. And those cars were really designed for those American circuits, unlike what we were running at the time. But, you know, we won our fair share of races and we did all right. We never got the championship, which was the one thing that, still, it irks me to this day. We had an XJR14, the finest racing car on the planet, and we couldn't just bring it over the line. It was a real shame. But
So-
it did look fantastic at Laguna going through the corkscrew.
I bet it
Yeah,
did. I
it
bet
looked
did.
amazing. Yeah.
If I take a step back here and I go, we've all been at Le Mans, we've all raced there. I know what it's like as a driver and the intensity and the pressure, but I can't imagine what it's like also for you guys, because obviously in racing we operate to a timetable that doesn't move, and stuff happens, doesn't it? You know, so from your guys' perspective, I've always wanted to know what it's actually like for you guys to go off and do a race like Le Mans.
It always helped being with a team that you thought you're in with a shout in.
Yeah.
Because you
So
know.
motivation
Yeah.
Oh,
was
yeah.
a key factor.
Yeah.
You know, you got as good a group of people as you could probably put together. You've got a car that could do it. You've obviously got the unknown element of Le Mans, because Le Mans will always bite you, and it's never a foregone conclusion. Look at Toyota. How many times did they try?
Yeah.
You know, with their budget and resource. But it always helped you go into a race, and that build up during the week. You had a job to do, and it was always a hard week, you know, with the practices in the evening and then late nights, early mornings.
How much sleep would you get through the week?
Not much.
No, not a great deal, because
No.
there's always the element that you have to go to the bar before you go to bed.
Yeah, to wind
Right.
down.
It's written.
What was the name of the hotel we stayed in at Le Mans? What was it called? And we always had to. Didn't she leave some beers out for us?
Femotel.
Femotel, that's it.
I've still got a couple of keys where I forgot to hand them back.
Yeah. No, you
Yeah.
have to be prepared for it, I think.
Yeah, you
going
do.
into it.
Yeah.
You know what? If you've done a few IMSA races, a few Daytonas, and a couple of Sebrings,
Daytona's a hard race.
Daytona's
It's the
hard.
longest night.
Yeah.
It's a 12-hour night at Daytona.
Cold too.
Cold.
Properly cold.
I remember in '89 they stopped the race in the middle of the night because of fog,
Yeah, right.
and all the cars parked up in the pit lane, and we were out there kicking a football about at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Trying to find a wing bag to sleep in.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Because it's so cold.
Just such a hard race, Daytona. You wouldn't believe it,
But
but
I
it
think-
is.
I think going into a 24-hour race, there's a couple of things as a mechanic you do. One, you bring your toothbrush and some toothpaste.
When you leave in that morning,
Yeah.
you know you're going for a couple of days.
Yeah, and you bring some socks. You bring
Oh, there's
some-
nothing like
Yeah.
a fresh pair of socks at 4 o'clock in the morning.
You bring
Oh,
socks.
mate, it's...
Yeah. I've still got my fire suit from Le Mans in 1990, and I've got my pass, and I've got the armband that you had to wear, and it's got the brake disc burn will be changed to caliper at 9 o'clock in the morning. And I remember beating this brake caliper on because they were TWR Inc. calipers, so they're incredibly tight on the studs. And Martin was in the car. I had both bleed nipples open.
Who was in the car?
Martin Brundle.
Oh, Martin Brundle,
And I had
okay.
both bleed nipples open. And I said to Martin, I'm going to tap in a rhythm, and I want you to pump when I'm not tapping, because I wanted to bleed the brakes as it went, as I was beating the caliper on.
Yeah.
And as soon as it got halfway on, I just closed the nipples. I said, how does it feel? He said, good, good. Tightened it up, and away we went. and I've got the caliper at home as well. You know, and those for me, those are my.
And that was in the race.
Yeah, it was in
Yeah.
the race, 9 in the morning.
There was always a great process of doing pad changes at Le Mans.
Yeah.
The unwritten. So you'd be on one side of the car, I'd be on the other.
Yeah.
So you'd go in, you'd have your tray of bits and pieces, your new pads. We had this monster tool for pushing the pistons back.
Yeah.
You had a pair of pipe grips to get hot pads out, and a tray. So you get your wheel off. The caliper would have a gate on the back that kept the pads in. You'd get the gate out of the way, and you'd go in and just put your tool in, ready. You'd then come up,
Nod.
look at your opposite, nod, push the pads in, come back up, nod again. Right, here we go. Tool out of the way, pads out, new pads in, shut the gate, do it all up, wheel on, send it.
Pump it.
But it's, you know, and the adrenaline, rush, it can be any time of night you want. But if you've got to do a pad change, you are on it. You know,
So what happens when you're at Le Mans, or let's say any race really, but highlight Le Mans, because I've won it a few times, so I might as well talk about it.
So have we.
I know, I can see. To me, when something bad happens in the race and the car's got to go into the garage, even though it's painful to watch, when I see you guys like dive in and solve this problem under pressure, under time pressure, everyone's looking at you. What does that feel like? And two, have you got, what happens when you've got someone in your group you don't trust?
it never gets that far.
Huh?
I don't think I've...
Like you're just not sure they're not
I've
quite
never had
right
that.
for the
I've
team.
never had that.
Never had that.
You never had that?
No, because the guys that have got that far,
I'm pretty good.
they walk the walk.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think. Well, it's interesting that Pete says that, and I say that.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been in a team. I've been in teams where there are shirkers who, you know, but in a bun fight situation like that, the pressure's on, and you go to it, and it's almost the deal with looking at each other. I've worked with such great mechanics. You could literally have a spanner hit the guy behind you, reading what you're doing, and he'll, there's your half inch. There you go. It's there. You're both in that zone, and that's when cars on the ground gone, and then you go around and shake each other's hands, say, yeah, great job, good job, and it's just a real nice. I still get a buzz out of it.
Time stands still. You're just in this wonderful.
It does.
It's in this wonderful moment.
It is a wonderful moment, and that's what I'm saying. Like just standing there watching you guys do that, it's like you see a part of, like, say, humanity that you don't see on a regular basis. You know what I mean? You see something quite special, and that's what you're talking about.
Well,
Yeah,
equally,
it is.
when a driver, you know, you get a pole, or you've had a few of those. You get a pole, it's like, yes, you know, it's a similar sort of feedback thing, you know.
What about when you've got a driver that you don't think should be in the car but is?
Yeah.
How does that work for you guys as a team? How do you keep motivated? How do you manage
You
that?
just have to be professional.
Yeah, it's your job. It's not down, you know. I never thought it was down to us to really judge drivers too much.
That's above our pay grade.
Did you find people in the garage did? Only because I was
Again, not particularly. It's because
not because I'm a
really.
driver and I want to hear what goes on behind the scenes. You know what I mean?
I think we know
You're
each other
okay.
well enough.
You're okay. Yeah.
No, again, but that's working for a good team has its benefits because you get good drivers.
Some drivers are more difficult to work
Oh,
with
for
than
sure.
others.
Yeah, way pickier.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But you have to just go with it because that's what if that's what makes them work and helps you get the best out of them, it works both ways, doesn't it? You have to, you know, treat them with kid gloves.
And who would you rate as, like, that driver was top of the tree in what you're working on?
I've got.
Don't mention me because that's just not fair.
Right.
You go
Martin
first.
Martin Brundle, yeah. And why?
Because of his level of professionalism. You know, he wouldn't come in and spit the dummy out and throw his gloves away as car's a piece of shit, you know. He went to the same school as Ross, I reckon, you know, he just thinks it through. Right, let's get to the bottom of this problem. It's doing this for a reason, let's sort it out. You know, and it's just his level of professionalism, even when under great pressure, you know. I have to say, yeah, for me, Martin.
So, I've worked with Sir Lewis Hamilton, Nico Rosberg, Valtteri Bottas, Jenson Button, you know, tons
To
of
name but a few.
To name a few Grand Prix drivers.
So a few average drivers there then, yeah. No?
Yeah, a few, yeah,
Yeah,
Coming up through the ring.
Yeah. They've got work to a little bit of work.
Got work to do.
Yeah, work to do.
But Martin Brundle.
No way.
Again, really?
Again, no, seriously.
Really?
Seriously. I first met him in 1989 at Del Mar, and he gets in the car, and he goes, the steering wheel's not in the middle of the seat, right? So the next 5 hours we spend undoing that, that horrible half-moon thing, and moving it over and re-drilling and gluing in new inserts and everything else to get the steering column in the middle of the seat. And on Sunday during the race there, it was a turbo car, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, he comes in for a pit stop, and I'm doing the inside front air jack, cleaning the windscreen. He opens the door and he gives me the top of the clutch pedal, and he sort of says, "I'm going to need a push." And we push him out. He backs it into the wall at just about 2 laps before the end. But you know, when we did Le Mans with him in 97 at Nissan, he was fantastic. He unbelievable. Just he could drive around any problem that we presented him, and he just had a feel for the car and a mechanical sympathy for the car. You know, I opened it. We had a terrible race. We were changing gearboxes all the time, and we were down to our last set of gear ratios, and they were not the Le Mans ratios. So we built a Christmas tree of gears, and
Really?
we shoved it in the side of the gearbox. And I said to him, "Good luck."
Yeah.
And he says, "What ratios have I got?" I said, "Anything that we've found in the truck that looks about right." And off he went. And he came on the radio about 4 or 5 laps later, and he said, "These ratios are interesting." And I'm starting to get used to them, and the lap times were right there.
Started to adapt.
He adapted, and he just looked after the car. And he was
So I've just got
very good.
just one quick story. XR 14, 91, Monza. So I worked on Tio's car, the other car, which Martin was in. So Sunday morning,
Well, he was sharing between the two, like
where
Monty.
Tom wanted to put it.
Yeah.
So we had morning warm-up, and then you stand around, polish it, and then you got pit lane walkabout. So we push our car out. You remember the big tall number 1, Alva? Mm-hmm. So everybody's all relaxed. It's all good. We're ready for so morning warm-up, gone, pit lane walkabout, push our car out, and then go to push his car out. As he pushes his car out the garage, he slips. There's a pool of oil on the floor like this under the car. So drag it in, engine change. We hadn't done an engine change under an hour. They did it in about like 40 minutes. Let's throw everybody out.
Yeah.
So Martin started from pit lane, won the race.
Yeah, right.
And the
That was-
disc, the
where was
carbon
that?
disc,
It was Silverstone, was it?
Monza,
Monza.
carbon discs were worn through so that the vent holes, you could see through the disc.
Ooh.
Unbelievable. Martin Brundle.
Wow. Can you remember a time when the shit did hit the fan, you had to pull out a miracle, but you still actually won the race?
That'd be it.
That one.
That's got to be
That
it.
one.
Yeah, I reckon. Yeah. Because one, we didn't have enough time, or the other crew didn't have enough time to change an engine, and they did.
Yep.
And yeah, got it out of the bag. Yeah, that was the one for me.
Pete?
I don't know, I can't think of. There's been a few miracles over the years, but no, I can't think of one that immediately comes to mind. No, there's been a lot of big moments though.
Now, you guys have worked outside of motorsport as well. Bloodhound, Ineos,
Yeah.
America's Cup. What were those projects like when you compare how things were done there compared to how things are done in, let's say, motorsport? How did you transfer those skills and help those projects?
I think America's Cup, it's competitive engineering. So just because you don't have four wheels, it's still an incredibly technical sport, and there's so much transferable technology from Formula One and motorsport into the marine sector. You're dealing with the sort of same materials, carbon hulls, everything is carbon.
Did you find anything coming the other way from what you learned there back into Formula One or back into racing?
Yeah, for me the big shock in working in the marine world was surface finish. We think in motorsport we're pretty good at the surface finish of the wings and everything else. There's nothing compared to the foils on a cup boat. What we had to do to on the surface finish, how you paint them, just so you don't get cavitation, separation, or ventilation on a foil. It's incredible, and that was a real big bit of learning, and none of these bits are claved. The composite parts don't go into autoclaves. It's all done with hand layout, and again, that was something I hadn't seen in many, many years, and how that's moved on. It's hard to say really, but the hydraulic pressure is 600 bar on America's Cup boat. And a Grand Prix car it's 100.
Wow.
And everything's huge. Everything is absolutely massive, and having to use cranes. Get 3 cranes to turn the hull over to do some proof testing, things like that. It was.
And what was your role? What was your role there?
I was build operations manager for that. So it was a Mercedes. We did the design and we built a lot of the assemblies for the yacht, and we tested a lot of the components, the foils. Well, most of the yacht, we did all the R&D testing on it. And then,
so a collaboration between you two, between Mercedes F1
and Athena Racing with Ben Ainsley's team, who then sailed the yacht, and we helped maintain it and kept delivering performance upgrades throughout the Cup campaign. But yeah, that's a tough sport.
I love watching it. It's to see those things come off the foil, and just
how do they do that?
And the tactics, how just one decision, like right there, can absolutely kill the race.
On the pre-start, we sort of thought the Kiwis were weak in the pre-start, and a couple of races that we did win in the Cup against them, we really honed in on that pre-start and putting them under pressure right at the beginning of the race and not making their lives too easy. Yeah, because they have a pretty good yacht. They've been doing it a while, so they've got a good team of people together all the time. It's a shame we didn't get the opportunity to go again, because I think we've done a better job.
Right.
And knocked them this time off their perch. And then as a
cool
Kiwi,
project,
it's a Kiwi trying to beat your own countrymen.
Right.
Yeah,
Bloodhound. Tell me.
Yeah.
Wow, that was pretty special. Well, it inspired me enough to drive 85 miles to work and 85 miles home every day.
Oh, really?
It was in Bristol. I drove from Oxfordshire to Bristol every day. But again, fortunate enough to know some people there and got a good position. My position was senior lead on the build, so which was a great position from a point of view of being involved at all levels. So being involved on the floor, both hands-on and a little bit of design input, because the DO would say, how can we do this? How's best to give you access to this, that and the other? So working in conjunction with upstairs and downstairs. And also, it's not every day that they'd say, can you go to RAF Coningsby, which is the service centre for the Typhoon, our frontline fighter, because Bloodhound had a jet, a Rolls-Royce EJ200, which is the same jet as in the Typhoon. They say, can you go to Coningsby and see how they do engine changes? So that we can sort of try and carry over a bit of that knowledge on how we change the engine. So went there, met the station commander, got involved with the guys on the floor, was present for an engine change. So how quick to change an engine in a Typhoon? 25 minutes.
Sorry?
25 minutes.
Really?
Yep,
No.
with a cherry picker.
Really?
Unbelievable. Yeah, again, a group of pros,
Yeah.
bang, 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 into a cradle, fresh one in, boom, done. 25 minutes. Unreal. and then, oh, Viv, can you go to Rolls-Royce at Filton and see how we bore scope the engine? Because you need to know, look at turbine blades. Given that the thing is going to be that far off the ground and there's a high likelihood of it ingesting something nasty, you need to be able to inspect the blades. So you go and do that. So that was a great role. And again, being on the floor, using fabrication skills, machining skills, stuff that I've kind of picked up over the years, because it was a mix between a racing car, an aeroplane, and a train. It's 40 foot long, weighed over 8 tons, an incredible piece of machinery. So to be involved in that was pretty good outside of motorsport. Yeah, really enjoyed that time there.
Question for you. You've been involved in lots of different teams. How important is culture in those teams? And which team had the best culture?
Culture, I think, is everything, especially in a modern Formula One team. I think
Any team or just?
I would have to say Mercedes because I spent so long there.
Yeah.
And I watched it change from from going from Honda to Braun and then on to Mercedes, and the changes that Mercedes made, then the arrival of Toto Wolff and how one person can make such a difference. We talked about Ross from the technical perspective, from human performance perspective. Toto Wolff arrives. He said day one he turned up at Mercedes and there was an old coffee cup sitting on the table and a copy of the Daily Mail that was 3 days out of date, and he knew from that, seeing that he had a lot of work to do with us, and to get us to the standard where we needed to be successful, and he did raise our game very, very, very quickly. And the culture changed not overnight. We put a lot of effort into culture. It's not something you can just muck about with. You've got to work at it like everything. If you want to have a very successful team, you've got to work at culture. You only notice culture when it's going wrong. Yeah?
Right.
Because that's what you fall back on as a team, as an organization. And the culture gets you through the difficult moments, and the culture defines your championship years. We had a long run of championships, and how do you pick yourself up after you won a couple? You can become a bit big for your own boots if you just don't knock yourself back down again, and you knock everyone back to the level playing field of saying, we haven't won anything. We don't have a right to win every year.
That's quite a mind shift for people too, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And that's what we did. We would start each season going, we haven't won a damn thing. And start again and keep going. And to work through another season. And then at the end of it, come out victorious again, celebrate it, and then ground zero again and go again. And he sets that tone every day by his own passion. You see how passionate Toto is. And that's so contagious to everyone in that organization. I think when we worked together, at TWR, it was a different time. It was a different time.
I was just going to say this, yeah.
It was, and we had a lot of fun, didn't we? We took it really, really seriously, but we had some fantastic...
Worked hard and played hard.
We worked hard.
Is there less of the play hard now?
There's less of the play hard. Because instead of the guys going to the bar after a day, they run the racetrack. Physical fitness and human performance now is just as important, because the pit stops are 2.1 seconds. You've got to be in incredible shape to perform at that level consistently.
Focused,
yeah. Those are big tires. Those are heavy. Those wheels and tires are heavy.
What do they weigh? What's
I don't know off the top of my head, but they're just cumbersome. There's a lot of movement, upper body motion, back stuff. So the guys have to be fit. So it's the level's changed. We thought we were pretty good. We thought we were the pinnacle of professionalism back in the day, and I think we were. You know, but it's just a different time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but it was, and I think we've been lucky to work in
the eras, as such, in
and
the
to see
teams,
it
yeah,
change.
see
Yeah,
the
I'm not
change.
so sure that I could do that now, you know. I don't think I would fit at all. You know, I've got a lot of stuff under my belt, and I've always sort of prided myself of being able to go into a team from an outsider and adapt and work to their rules. And, you know, I've been self-employed for 25 years, and I've been called upon to work for various teams. And I've always thought, yeah, that I need to play it their way, their rules, it's their ball. But, you know, I don't know whether I get, when I hear the stories, particularly of Formula One, and I think that you would be one of the first to say that modern day sports cars have just upped the ante so much, haven't they? Technically, they're
Amazing.
They're amazing vehicles now. You know,
Well, we had a conversation the other day, how shocked a little bit you were, or surprised at the level of engineering.
Yeah.
And the data required was actually pretty similar to Formula One in
Yeah, it's
the
unbelievable.
World Sports Car
You go
Championship.
to a WEC race and you look at the amount of the amount of data engineers that are behind the scenes on a WEC team. It's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. You know what's coming off those cars. They're incredible. You know, I watched them change bump steer the other day. I haven't, you know,
as you do.
I haven't seen bump steer changed
Yeah, right.
on a racing car in 20
Deliberately.
years. Deliberately.
Yeah.
If we did change bump steer in F1, we were changing wishbones.
Yeah,
You
right.
know, to do that.
Yeah.
But they're very, very, very impressive cars. Beautiful cars.
So explain what bump steer is, if anyone here doesn't actually understand it.
It's like this. So as the car goes, as a wheel goes through its range of motion, the toe will change. So you're trying to keep the toe sort of parallel as it goes through its range of motion. You're trying to get rid of this as much as possible.
Because the steering rack doesn't go up and down with it.
Yeah.
The track rod is fixed at this end. On this end, it's going in an arc
Yeah.
as the suspension goes up and down. So, in effect, making the path of that wheel shorter or longer.
Well done. You did it far better than I.
Sorry.
I should have defined a shapely lady.
Yeah, I wonder what you were doing there.
If I go back to like how you got into the sport and how much that's changed now in terms of people wanting to get into the sport and do what you guys did. And we had a chat about it the other day, and I asked you about, you know, a lot of kids go through uni, whatever, and the first job they want to do is F1. They just want to get to F1. Yeah, and it's like they've got no experience really, but they want to go into
And it
F1.
always used to be Formula Ford, you know, Formula 3. Formula 3 mechanics were brilliant because they knew everything. Do those ratios, yeah, no problem. Put the front uprights, do the setup, do this, do that. And they had to know all of the car. Well, an F1 car is so complex. And well, I think I've heard the term many a time, they're just fitters. They get their little bit and they have to do that. But in order to have something that's, I mean, it's the nature of the beast by quite a degree because they are so complex. Yeah. You can't have one person covering such a big area. You have to have your little bit and then you can just tick the box.
The interesting thing about the conversation we had is how AI filters out loads of applicants before they even get to the point of looking at the next bunch of applicants to see whether or not, because obviously you get bombarded by, you know, thousands of applicants probably every day.
Yeah,
but it's, and I always wondered, how do they get through all of that? And it's obviously AI filters out. And I said, there must be some really good people that get sidelined because the AI doesn't pick up who they really are.
But again, you know, programs like Drive to Survive have just, so many more people want to be involved in motorsport now because of all the documentaries that come out around motorsport. You know, in America, they've got the NASCAR documentary, I can't remember what it's called, on Netflix. You've got Drive to Survive. You know, motor racing is now seen as something really I want to be involved
Yeah,
in
yeah,
that.
I know.
It
Yeah.
looks exciting. And you do get thousands of applications for one role. So as a manager in a cost cap world as well, you can't have your
Well,
manager.
that was the other thing, was the cost cap side of it.
You can't
yeah.
have a manager who's included in the cost cap sitting there looking through 1,000 CVs, as I used to do. You know, I might look through 250, and I thought that was a lot, but that would take hours.
Yeah.
In a cost cap, you can't do that. So, you know, in the cost cap world, the manager gets 3 CVs and interviews those 3 people. And you've got to hope and pray that the system has worked. And on the whole, it does work. It does work really well. So, but that's the world you've got to work in these days.
Wow.
I wonder if they'll start choosing drivers based on that.
Yeah, yeah, right.
One can only hope.
Well, guys, I have to say that was fascinating. I don't know if you thought that as well, but to hear it from these guys, which you don't hear that often, I think this platform hopefully will give you guys the opportunity to talk about your stories, and there's lots for people to learn from it as well, you know,
Yeah,
and be
yeah.
inspired by it and stuff.
And
So
to see the next generation coming on, you know, with apprenticeship schemes becoming more and more prevalent again, you know, it's so important. Every day is a school day.
I was talking to a kid on Friday at work, and the British GT were running at Silverstone
That's
this
right.
weekend. Yeah. So this kid, who must have been 19 or 20 years old, in his lunch hour on Thursday or Friday, he'd walked around all the teams and asked to work for free. You know,
There you go.
just to get some experience. And I thought, good on you, mate.
Yeah, exactly.
That, you know, good on you. That's,
good initiative.
That's
That's actually doing something, isn't
Yeah,
it? It's all
yeah.
about doing
Proactive.
something, being
yeah.
proactive.
And I
yeah.
thought, good on you, because that's what I would have done. You know, and
There you
I
go.
like that. Really
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it.
yeah,
It still goes on, and which is reassuring.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you.
Cheers, Dave.
Thank you.
Nice one.
Well, round of applause, I think, for the guys here.
Tapping yourself.
And thank you for joining us.